quick intro, a little bit more about myself. I've been working with, SharePoint forever. Teams before it was Teams, SharePoint before it was SharePoint for sure. I was the first hire inside of Microsoft IT to basically make it a service at Microsoft. So basically working with Jeff Teeper's team to help get it into the data center and then turn it into a global service. And Office 365, before it was Office 365, we called it Managed Services. We started with Energizer, and I was the architect in IT back at that time, trying to set up what would be later SharePoint Online as a service. I've been working with this stuff for a long time. I now work at Perficient as a director. I'm a Microsoft MVP and a regional director. And with me, I've got Michael Gannotti.
Hey, Joel. So, Mike Gannotti here. My title this year, it changes year to year, is I am a Teams Principal Technical Specialist. And I'm covering all things team, but like Joel, I've been covering Microsoft services related to collaboration going back prior to Microsoft, when I was a corporate systems architect at Vanguard Mutual Funds. Got started when it was Tahoe and then became SharePoint. And fun fact, it was myself and another customer rep from, I believe it was Wells Fargo, and we were the two customer people who had to sign off as ready for release. So been doing this forever, love it, great folks in the community, and really excited about today and getting to share some of what we're doing in real time. Like I was talking to Russ a little while ago, how with everything happening with COVID and the seriousness of responding in real time, how in many ways, solution-wise, we're kind of building the airplane as we fly. And
absolutely,
excited.
Yeah, and I think I'm really interested in your stories, and I think the way we're gonna do this session, I'm gonna set the vision a little bit. I want to talk about some stuff in crisis management and how the Microsoft team has really been putting together some really great solutions. And then I'm going to hand it over to Mike, and we can absolutely cut back and forth if we need to a couple times.
Yeah,
but
I was just going to say in Q&A, and as we share them, I think the important thing for our audience is not only if there's folks that want to make use of some of these solutions, but asking, and let's talk about how you might go about doing some of the similar things and leveraging this whole platform to deliver the solutions that are, because while a lot of this I'm going to show will be healthcare focused, because that's my space, it's really things that can apply in many other arenas as well.
Absolutely. And hey, thanks to the sponsors. They're really the ones who kind of back us up here. Obviously, in a physical environment, there would be booths and stuff. We would send you over there. Since we don't have that, we're gonna call them out in the slides, but we really appreciate the work that they do to make this possible. And I'm also going to encourage you to definitely tweet us. The hashtag is Microsoft Teams Day Online. Like Alec was mentioned earlier, if you need any links or whatever, that's the modernworkplacessummits.com. And hey, we've got a fantastic community. I love to travel, and I won't go into that because I want to save some time for slides, but I was actually supposed to be in Africa about now, delivering a few sessions in Africa. With this crazy stuff that's going on, I'm grounded as well, but we've got a great global community. I'm sure we've got people from all over on this right now, but I'm thinking about you guys. And the one thing I wanted to call out as well is you may have heard of the InfoPath funeral. Ignite, we actually had a wedding for SharePoint and Teams. I really want people to know that it's not that that the SharePoint community is also the Teams community. There's a lot of people who are telephony who may have come from the Skype world, but Teams is really about collaboration as well as chat teams and meetings. And in fact, I put together a little bit of a infographic to just kind of illustrate the fact that when you think about an iceberg, you have what you can see above the water. And with Skype and Teams, the things that are very visible is the calling, chat, and meetings. But what you don't see is this hidden collaboration functionality in Teams. And that's the fact that you can attach to storage. By default, it's SharePoint and OneDrive, but you can attach to Box, Dropbox, the Citrix stuff. It's really rich, not just from a storage perspective, but from an application platform perspective. And these templates we're going to be talking about a little bit later on really illustrate the fact that you can really build fully fledged solutions. And especially when you connect it to the Power Platform, this thing really, really lights up. And in fact, I would even say Teams is really your best bots platform. If you want to plug in a bot into your workplace solution, Teams is fantastic for that. And the channels are really good at being able to help you organize your teams. And this, when I say Teams first, it's because of this rich functionality under the water, essentially, this kind of this hidden functionality, this transformative collaboration where you've got essentially messaging and collaboration converging. And there's a rich set of functionality around Teams. I'm not going to dive into all these things, but just suffice to say, Teams is this chat-centered workplace or workspace, but essentially it has all the tools, and if it doesn't, that's where it's so extensible that it really can be this hub for teamwork. But even and beyond, we're talking enterprise solutions, personal solutions, and with the roadmap, Yammer is going to be right in there as well. Not that you can already add Yammer as a tab, but being able to have it top level right there, where these things really integrate, don't need to compete. The other kind of high level visual I want to give you guys is this idea that your inbox is really not the place to get work done. For outside, I understand where you kind of get bombarded with things, but really inside the organization, the best place is to organize that data and your projects into channels. So we have these various work streams that are coming into us. If we use channels, that data can be automatically organized in a way that we can then focus across the work streams as we decide to. We can use that as activities to help us be more organized. I love this vision. The future of digital working will offer tools that tie communications, content, tasks, applications, and collaborative work together around work streams. That's exactly what we have with Teams, is this idea of work streams that then allow us to connect to back-end applications and automation, messaging, meetings, bots, and so on. It's really this powerful engagement UI. It's so much more than just chat and meetings. And this may be a lot to kind of take in here, but I just kind of want to even step back further and say there's this concept of the modern workplace. And the modern workplace actually brings in all of these tools and all the various audiences across your tasks, your teams, your communities, with Yammer being plugged in, the regions and departments through the news feeds that can come in, and the various things from the outside world, but as well external sharing with partners and customers, and your ability to plug in your parts and pages and wikis from the intranet perspective. And then you've got this really powerful platform, the Power Platform, that kind of comes across where you got your business process automation, RPA, and building solutions like on Power Apps and anyway, lots of stuff with Power Automate and as well. So lots of cool stuff you can do. And that's not to say we've got things like Microsoft Search for connectors, bringing data in, and Project Cortex from a knowledge network perspective, as well as things like Power BI to bring in our analytics. All those things plug in an incredible way. And then we've got the hundreds of other systems across your systems of engagement that you can bring in, like messaging, where you can basically bring your messages into that chat workspace, and your systems of record that we can connect through Microsoft Search. This is a work in progress, but I'm trying to create a nice visual to kind of encapsulate this idea of the modern workplace. Because Teams really is a platform. We've got our productivity apps, our third-party apps, our no-code, low-code integration, as well as those apps that we then build with the Power Apps and the Dev platform. We'll talk about Dev in a little minute, but essentially the other reason why I say Teams first is this idea that if you put Teams as your UI, you can plug in your intranet and your news, you can plug in your comm sites, you can plug in Yammer, plug in your streaming video, plug in, your communities and your plans and your, OneDrive's already happening by default. Seriously powerful platform. So instead of having to say, use Planner in these circumstances, use SharePoint in these circumstances, and so on, this idea of a Teams first approach helps you organize your data, but also is great for adoption because you can plug all these things in, and it's a maturity after that of, hey, we're not using this just for chat and channels, we're actually now using it much for actually getting work done, and we're building templates and building applications on top of it. And this is where I want to jump into what Microsoft's been doing with this crisis time, where essentially I'd love to know behind the scenes. Seems like overnight every product team at Microsoft was working on building out templates, and we've got a crisis site and community solutions portal across Teams, SharePoint and Yammer, as well as this remote work solution and tips and tricks from Teams, and some really cool crisis communication. There's like a mobile app work status that's built on the Power Platform with Power Apps, and a cool crisis FAQ bot that can answer people's questions. But I'm going to have you jump in, Mike, talk a little bit about what Microsoft's been doing.
Sure. So, on our end, I can tell you that, in my role, so I'm in the healthcare and life sciences division, and I support, our field sales for the Northeast. But just as you said, overnight with the COVID crisis, what Microsoft has done is, really been focusing on our customers as partners, right? Wanting to aid and assist. So we have had a all hands, on deck approach that includes not only the product teams initiating and doing some stuff like the crisis management solution. You had that first come out from the team. Then you had some other folks who took that and then created a template, which they added to the SharePoint Designs lookbook, where you can actually instantiate it as a team. They took it one step further. We have some of the pieces that I'll be showing where we've had field actually engaged and taking things like the communications template that's out there, and then you have a crisis communications template, right? And building on that to help develop a more robust, focused on crisis communications, and I'll show some of that. But we've had other things like where people are responding in real time and saying, hey, we need to be able to do virtual visits and we need it simplified. And some of the folks from the engineering team working with some of our healthcare providers along with field folks actually coming together to in real time develop solutions and then going on iterations of those solutions to further flesh those out. Same thing with virtual roundings where you had to minimize exposure. And I'll show a bunch of this. I didn't know, are you still going to show some more slides?
Yeah, I've got a few more.
Yeah, I'll hold all that. So
I dive in a little bit further, and then
good.
I think it'll be a good. So this is the SharePoint template, and what you can expect is things like bringing in the news, bringing in these. Here's the response team. You got the regional aspect of different communication, because it seems like every state has its own rules, every country has its own rules. about what's going on and how to deal with it as well. You've got the various numbers for safety and that kind of thing. And you got these, say, country managers or people who are your HR contacts or safety contacts. You can see with this template as well, they're bringing in the CDC and as various news sources. There's an Ask Crisis Management, which there's the community, where inside of Yammer, basically you've got people being able to ask questions and being able to mark answers so people can actually get that, which is also hooked up to the FAQ bot for being able to ask crisis-based questions even to the bot. I'm not going to spend much time on this, but this idea of crisis communications, this is also something that you can kind of step back and say, hey, no matter what kind of disaster, can we be prepared? And there's an audit that essentially you can do to make sure that you know what that you're prepared for these kinds of things. Obviously, we're in the middle of this, so saying, hey, can we get prepared is a little bit late to time to be preparing, but you can still figure out what are the things we should be working on. Do we have a disaster response? What can we do to be on top of this? And I do want to essentially let people know that Microsoft Teams has templates, and these templates essentially make it easier for you to know how to build solutions inside of Teams. So basically, one of those is an HR support bot. There's an FAQ plus experience, and essentially, if you're really trying to know, like, how do you build applications inside of Teams, I really think that you should look at the HR support one. It's a really fully featured one that kind of helps you understand what's possible with these Teams apps. So basically talking about Teams as an application platform. There's we talked about all these different solutions. Microsoft Teams has actually probably taken the front and center at this crisis, where you've got your chat, meetings, and calling. So it's a great place where you're looking for your work from home solutions. A lot of people are living in Teams. I know I'm living in Teams these days, where what's great is when I share files, it's automatically in OneDrive if I'm sharing it to individuals or a group of individuals. And then when I'm sharing with my team, it automatically goes into the SharePoint site. It's just this really powerful hub for teamwork. And we're using this exclusively for our meetings and calling. If our customers use other things like Zoom or whatever, it doesn't conflict, especially from a work from home environment. I end up using all sorts of solutions based on whatever our customers are using. This is the one where I was going to transition to you, Michael. But this virtual rounding solution that Max Fritz put together, I really think this is super cool, and I love the stories you were telling me about how it's actually being used on the front lines.
All right. Well, let me go ahead. Before I'm going to leave your screen up there for 1 second, but
sure.
Just kind of to set the stage. So I'm going to walk through a series of scenarios, starting with actually the health bot and COVID template, although that's not Teams. We'll talk about how it can lead into Teams. And again, it's one of those examples of things being done in real time in response to customers. So we're going to start off with the health bot. Then I'm going to get into actually virtual visits, because I want to go through kind of it's that experience, right? From a healthcare provider, in our case that I'm going to cover today, healthcare provider and patient piece, there's that first contact potentially in a health bot. Then there's the visit, the virtual visit to kind of triage. Then we're going to hit the roundings, which is actually going into V2. So I'll show a little sample of what they're doing in that. Then we'll move on from that to crisis communications, crisis management, and then some extensions. And I'll talk briefly about opportunities for folks that are out there to either start to look at how they can roll their own solutions, as well as if there's partners and others that are looking to start to get ideas around, what are folks doing out there. So I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop, and it says it's going to kick you off, but that's okay. And like Joel, I like to travel, but I tend to travel underwater, although I know Joel does as well. So there I am, and where I'd like to be. But we're going to start off, like I said, with the health bot and move quickly into COVID. So Microsoft has been working heavily, and Joel mentioned bots is a big thing for us. Creating bots to, simplify and virtualize interactions around common processes is a big deal with a lot of industries, both internally and externally. And so the health bot was one of those first go rounds with us for an external one, where what we have done is we created this bot, right, that allowed folks to be able to instantiate, and we have a couple of different case studies that are out there. In fact, if you go to Microsoft.com and you can just type in Microsoft Health Bot and find some links around that. We have here a demo up, and if you scroll down, you can actually start to interact with it, or even see, here's a couple of the case studies where you can see it on their public-facing website. And so, a prospective patient might go to that, Premera Blue Cross or Aurora Healthcare or Quest Diagnostics and say, hey, I've got this issue, and actually have it walk them through and then guide them to a course of action, be it connecting them where to go for a local facility. So we have some hospitals, for example, that have that out there that actually prompts them, uses mapping services that it ties in, prompts them to connect with those facilities. But we've taken this and said, look, we want to be able to templatize it. And with that templatizing, create something specific. And when the COVID health crisis arose, we actually had one of our, I'll call them partners, but it was a healthcare provider who they came to us right away, and they'd been looking at the health bot, and they said, hey, we need some help around this. And, in our healthcare and life sciences group, we actually have physicians on staff. We have nurses on staff. We have a whole national org of healthcare clinicians that are a part of this org, and they worked with them to create this thing called the COVID-19 template that allows an org to stand up the healthcare bot, but pick the COVID-19 template and instantiate that. And one of the most well-known, it's in ZDNet and CNET and a whole bunch of others. So if you go to the CDC website and you go to their self-checker, you'll actually see here this self-checker. This is it. So, this is it is on many hospitals that I'm working with now in the New York area, in the Northeast, and nationwide. But somebody can come in and they can begin, and here they're calling the health bot Clara, and each healthcare provider has given names, their own name for that, and it gets them started on an actual assessment, right? So I can say, hey, I'm here in PA, and submit, and then, are you ill or caring for someone? I'll say yes. Are you answering for yourself? Myself. I'm an old man. I'm pushing 60. So, and gender, and it's going to go through and then start to ask you all these questions, and then at the end provide you guidance and or connect you to a system like I'm about to show you. And the beauty of it is, again, it's one of those things where it was done in almost real time, like you said, Joel, in the beginning, where we kind of put a pause on some of the other development and said, look, we want to help where we can and how we can. In fact, they even have there's an offer out there with links to it off the Microsoft site where, as a part of this, we're given free hosting and cycles during this COVID crisis for customers, where they can go ahead and get that up there and not have to pay some of the usual Azure costs associated with it and things, because we recognize this is life dependent. for many folks. So this is an instance where we created this bot, took something that we had, created a variation, a template, working with an actual healthcare provider, but then made it available. And then any customer can then further customize that, working with us or partners like Proficient and others, where they can go ahead and say, look, we want to instantiate this, but we want it to do the following. Maybe they want it to connect people to their numbers for the call center for a healthcare provider, or it could be even to self-schedule a virtual visit. So this is available. I'll provide a list of links around this to Russ so he can post this up later as a part of the event. But this is one of those examples, and although this is not part of Teams, it can lead into Teams. In fact, that's one of the first things that we've seen done. So I'm going to switch over from here to our Smarter Health. It's my demo environment, Smarter Health, where we build things for demoing, and where in fact we've been doing a lot of the building with our healthcare providers on the fly, and I'll be showing you some of that. And the first instance is this thing that we're going to call, it's part of bookings, and it is an extension of it for virtual visits. So if you're not familiar with bookings, bookings is a standalone Office 365 application. I'll show you how we pull it into Teams. There's two methods, but it is this capability that allows us to set up virtual triaging for physicians. So for example, one of the first examples I had from a customer standpoint, they had a call center, and they said, look, we want them, if they're filling out that COVID-19, either if they call us directly to our call center, or if they go onto the COVID bot that we're instantiating, it guide them to that call center. And then our call center people have access to this bookings. So somebody could come in here, in general and say, and you can see it says COVID-19 triage, and they can say, I need to create a new booking. It's that initial consult where they're going to enter the patient's name, their email, phone number, address, notes, and this is all set up per the guidelines around scheduling one of these type of sessions where they're going to be doing a virtual. In fact, they have, within this, you'll see when I get into the other piece, some of this we hide when we get into how we instantiate it right within Teams itself, but it allows us to set up a consultation that's going to notify the doctor as we pick different physicians, and it's going to send an email that can be joined from any patient via an Android or iOS phone or tablet. It can be joined via Mac or PC, and they get that one-click join experience, and they're in a session where we can triage versus them coming into the hospital, right? And so that was one of the first things that we got hit up very hard with by a lot of our healthcare providers saying, look, we need to minimize exposure to help flatten that curve. So instead of bringing people straight in to the ER, we want to do a virtual consult where we can see them, assess them, we can have them take their temperature, show it, and do some other things via video that will allow us, voice and video, that'll allow us to make a determination, should this person come in or should they be at home? In fact, one of my colleagues is in home quarantine right now in his basement as we speak. And he went through this with his local healthcare provider with this virtual consult where he had started having symptoms, and they did a virtual consult. They said, look, your symptoms are at a point where you need to be isolated. We believe you do have it. We want to do some monitoring, and they actually sent to his house the kit for monitoring blood levels, the oxygen levels in his blood and some other things that could be done remotely. But it, again, minimized the exposure to their staff and allowed them to treat without bringing in somebody, a patient, what was a prospective patient who became a patient at home and monitor them actively and continue to schedule these sessions quickly. So this is a way that we can do it through here, but where the magic starts to happen is, again, how we bring it into Teams. And first of all, quick and easy, as you probably are aware, we can add any app as a tab. So one of the first go-rounds was customers adding that particular application, going in to something like the App Studio, creating an app for that web page, and then adding it as a tab within a team. So here I have a virtual visits team, and we have here a couple of different virtual visits for different locations that they're doing schedules around. And then within each of those, we have schedule where they've added that tab. And now in here, these folks can go ahead and they can schedule this particular service, right? And they can do it through this view. We also have, some different views. And so we can come in here, and this is just showing another view of it where we're going to that same one that we saw before. So we have the ability to go in, kind of customize what the experience will be, but this is through a very simple, just pulling in a web page. Taking it a step further, leveraging the APIs of Teams and starting to build on that, because these are ready services with the graph and other information where they could use Power Automate and some other things to pull in views of data and begin to do that. We actually then started to see our, here we go, bookings, our product team taking this and then beginning to run with it. And now in preview, we have a number of our healthcare providers, and one of them is I'm intimately familiar with, they're local. And here you can see a much different, more native experience where, again, they've taken this idea of Teams as this single pane of glass. I want to make it the one place where I go to get my work done for, and in this case, it's clinicians and it's a call center. And so we now have this native experience built within Teams where I can come in and say, I need a new booking, and put just the information that's pertinent for this triaging and what they want to do. So, I could go ahead and say, we're only grabbing a first name because some of the transmission of data, although a lot of the HIPAA compliancy things have been waived for COVID, we want to maintain a compliant solution, from our end. So being able to do just the first name, put in their email. So I'll put my work email. I'm not going to put my phone. And then you have here this explicit check that has to be done before you schedule. Attendees have consented to email communications. And this again has to do with HIPAA. So you captured that, potentially through a phone call with the call center, and that's where this came from. I can then pick the time, date and time, add staff, and it's now going to display for me staff that are a part of the bucket that we've added to this virtual visits capability, and it's going to show it based upon their availability within the schedule. So I'm going to go ahead and add Dr. G. I play a doctor on TV, not one in real life. You'll notice grayed out is Microsoft Teams meeting, because this is creating a Teams meeting on behalf of this physician or physicians or nurses, whoever the clinicians are. So there's nothing to put in here. And then add some internal notes. Sounds like may need admittance. There we go. And then we have add an email reminder. So the default is 1 day prior, but we might be given this, hey, let's let them know 15 minutes prior, and we'll just go ahead and give that to both. There we go, done. And when we're ready, we simply click send. So you can see here, it's building now that initial console, and here's the beauty of it. Again, it's the breadth of the system, like Joel said earlier. While we're building that in this bookings, in fact, what's happened is, let's go to my Outlook calendar. Oh, there's that initial consult with Michael. It's already live here. Here it is here. It's doing it in my Exchange for me. And so if I click this, I can see, and again, here you get this one-click join experience. And for the user, it's a similar experience with a single button, again, to do from their mobile or from their Mac or PC to bring them in. And then for their experience, though, we can also templatize and add some additional verbiage that we may want to have for them and provide that. But it's meant to, again, simplify that experience. I don't have to go into a calendar, schedule a thing, get the person's email, add it, blah, blah, blah. We've done it all here, right within Teams, using some of those APIs, pulling in stuff from bookings, and then using Power Automate to then generate that Outlook invite that's generating the Teams meeting, etc., all done from a single shot. So that's just that's one of those examples of where we're taking Teams and pulling the immediacy of things that need to be done. And then this is healthcare, but think of any type of industry where you need to do booking and other kind of things. You could then leverage similar type of an environment for that as well. It doesn't have to be COVID triaging. It could be customized for what you're doing for booking customers and doing remote consultations. I have a sister who is a home designer, and not only homes, but she also does like real estate and all that, for construction projects. But she's a designer and she consults with people. She can leverage something like this to then schedule those kind of appointments, and even during COVID, continue to go on. So I'm going to move on to the next, but real quick, are there any questions, Russ, that we're seeing?
No questions.
Okay. If you have questions, people, shout out. We want to know, and we'll keep going. So that's the first. That's that virtual visits, right? And that's a natural extension, bringing that in. Following on that, though, so we've visited with them. Maybe we need to bring them in and admit that patient. Again, one of those cases where we're seeing things in real time being developed and rolled out using the services. I'm going to go here to Microsoft, to the Teams view, and I am going to go in. I've already got one here, this virtual rounding or internal, and I'm going to click floor 3 and I'm going to say join a family. So this was the impetus for this was, again, you may have heard watching the news and stuff that physicians, nurses, all these clinicians that are within a healthcare environment, there's been a shortage of masks, of protective gear, and other things. So minimizing their exposure becomes crucial. And also, as they're being, there's so many needs happening and critical needs, being able to quickly tune in. It's one thing to be able to virtually do a round and visit somebody virtually who is able to respond to you, but also be able to pull them in and be able to just observe them. Maybe they're intubated on a ventilator or some other service. So this was a request from a customer. And if you look here, notice what it says, open in SharePoint. Going back to what Joel was saying, those underlying services. All we have here is a SharePoint page. Here we have quick links. And if you know anything about Microsoft Teams meetings, when you set up a meeting, it's active for 60 days. So that meeting can be joined and left and joined and left repeatedly for up to 60 days. So what they've done here is they created a list of rooms with the quick links being so that they can get the nice little icon here and then the verbiage, where they've created for the rooms different links, a link directly into that meeting so that a physician says, look, I need to visit with this person, and they can click and I don't want to kick me out, but they can click it, and they can then, if the person, depending on the response they want, we have some healthcare providers that said, look, we don't know what the state address or they're in the hospital, and we don't know, if they needed to get cleaned or what's going on. We wanted to prompt them to respond. So they have an iPad or an Android tablet sitting there mounted in their room, and they can just touch to answer, a quick touch. But we also had other customers said, look, we have people that are going to, again, be intubated, and we want to have a no-touch auto join. So the physician has to want to observe them and see, and they could have a view to their the person, and just to kind of get a quick look, or it could be the nurse wanting to do that. And again, minimizing exposure, and just with a click, have them. We know within the iPad, there's under accessibility, there is a setting for auto join. So in this case, it allows them to reach out to them, and it auto joins the session, and then they can make their observations, just make sure everything looks okay, and move on. This was just done using simple SharePoint, a link to the meeting, and then the quick links web part. And again, there is an article, Joel mentioned it, about Max Fritz. He's rock star. I get the pleasure of working with him. He published that, and he published a how to do this. But let's take it one step further. That's one solution. What if we wanted to make it a little more elegant? So it's not just the links here, but where we could do some additional functionality. So I'm going to go into here, and not virtual visits, I'm sorry. I wanted to go into oh shoot, I am patient navigator. Was it this one? Nope, I had it, and now it is hidden team. Here we go. No, that's not it either. Well, I can't show you. I was going to show you the new virtual visits. That's not virtual visit, virtual rounding V2. And if I stumble on it during this, I'll show you. But what they're actually doing, and just to kind of throw it out there, for this join a room, what they have, instead of just the links here, they've actually worked with Power Automate and bots, where they wanted to keep the session active and do some other things, querying it. And so with Power Automate, they've set it up where they can not only take a look here and be able to join a room and to be able to go out and work with a person through this piece, but also be able to then extend that. And in the case where the particular healthcare patient is conscious and able to respond and speak, sometimes they get isolated. And they said one of the biggest issues for them is that they showed up at the ER and they have their device, their phone, but they don't have a charger. So by using the same device, they're able to set out now an extension of it where they can reach out to their own family and have it be, no other experiences being enabled there, but actually connect one click. So they just tap their family's icon, it reaches out to them, and it's a meeting, and then the family can call, or the family can do the same to them and be able to go ahead and initiate a connection, not only a virtual rounding with a physician, but then a virtual session with their own family through that as well, because we know how isolated, and they could be there for several weeks. So that's virtual rounding. If there's any questions, I could take them now, or I'll move on to crisis communications.
Mike, I'm not seeing any questions coming in. We're trying to figure out for sure that it's enabled.
All right. Sounds good. I'll just keep going. So that's from a virtual roundings. Again, we're taking some of the platform and now building things like there is a communications template for doing corporate communications and an org. It's built in Power Apps, but they've now created a crisis communications template really meant to focus on things where there might be an issue. And it's not just COVID, it could be maybe there's a hurricane, maybe there's a disruption at a physical location, etc. So many things that might be there, we're able to provide communications. And here you see where, as an employee, they've added it to the left tab, just like we did the bookings app here or the virtual visits. But what we've gone ahead with this now is by adding it here, we have a one-stop kind of dashboard where they can pull in and look at world news as a person, company news, emergency contacts, links, FAQ. It's almost like a dashboard of a crisis management portal. Very similar, but a little more focused on immediate communications. But if we come back into Teams, you'll see, and I'm going to go into our incident response team and go to the admin center. We also have an admin view for it. So this is a private team that was set up where they added in the template, there is an admin view. And so specific individuals are added to that admin view. And what they're able to do is then share things like, let's say I need to send out an alert to all company. So I can create a new post and I can say, let's see, attention, attention, if I could spell, there is an uptick in reported symptoms. And then I could give some details. Our call center is seeing a sharp uptick today in calls with symptoms. And I could go on. I'm going to just leave it right there. I could have, much more descriptive and it'd help if I could spell. There we go. So we could have a, quite lengthy, and you can see here we have all capability for doing rich formatting and links, etc. And then I could give a blurb. I'm just going to copy and paste. But you could have some information. I have the ability to deprecate this call, this alert. But once I'm done, I simply click save. Now it'll take a moment, but what's happening now is it's leveraging again the Power Platform. So although I'm in Teams, it's this one-stop shop, and we'll see here both in chat and in activity in a moment that'll pop up. But using the Power Platform, we use Power Apps for the input and the view. We instantiate that as an app here in a tab view within Microsoft Teams, and also we've done it here on the left. There we go. We can see that's happened. Boom, I saw those flows kick in for me. And if I come up here to chat, I'll see, there we go. And we just left it, named the same. So I can see there's an uptick in reported symptoms. I can click read more. It'll take me to information about that. I also had under activity the same. So it's this quick alerting, and it's going to alert them on their mobile devices. It's going to alert them on their Mac, their PC. But now everybody is going to get that particular notification. And if there are links to, maybe report here, call here, check here, check in, whatever the case might be that we're alerting, that's all built in and provided via this Power Platform application that was rapidly developed to be able to then instantiate it here in Microsoft Teams, or it can be a standalone app that can be downloaded as well to the mobile devices, for example, so they can access it either and or ways. But it's this idea of, again, painting the one pane of glass Here I'm working with my teams, I'm chatting with my colleagues, and now I'm also alerting these crisis communications all through this singular portal interface where, and here we go, there's that one, where people are getting their work done and bringing it together. I'm assuming there's no questions, but if there is, feel free to jump in and stop me.
Yeah. Hey, Mike,
yeah.
just so you know, there's apparently that Q&A was not enabled, so
Gotcha.
we're not getting questions from anybody for this. So,
all right. Well, feel free to hit me up later on LinkedIn, on Twitter. On Twitter, I'm at Gannotti. On LinkedIn, it's Mike Gannotti. Just like I said, hit me up. So
yeah, I think a common question is about the slides.
Yeah.
And I think what would be great is to get a bunch of links from you.
Yep.
And we can post. I can post it on my blog. Mine's collabshow.com.
Absolutely.
But I'll definitely be tweeting out a link to the slides, and any links I get from Mike, I'll post those, and I'm sure you'll be tweeting stuff as well. But
yes,
Twitter's probably the best place to kind of like do a quick hit. But I'm on LinkedIn as well, Joel Oleson.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is fantastic stuff you're showing here, Mike.
And just for the last piece, before I know we have to close up here. The crisis management portal, I don't want to spend a bunch of time, but you can see here how it can be quickly customized. So live events is probably one of the biggest things. Microsoft 365 live events that you can deliver via Stream, Yammer, or Teams to do wide scale broadcasting to your entire organization. That's been my highest request piece from customers over the last 2 weeks as they look to be able to message and have their C-level execs talk to their folks who are homebound, etc. But you can take something like this, take that template that Joel managed, and again, create an app. So I can go use something like App Studio, create an app that then I can add to the left and pin it for all users. I could add it as a tab and then bring that same experience. Again, the whole idea is Teams is that single pane of glass where I get my work done. And now even something like the crisis management portal can become an app. It's a SharePoint template, but now it's a Teams app. So my users never have to leave Teams to get to what they need. I know we're coming at the top of the hour, so I'm going to stop there. I hope this has been helpful. And like I said, I'll provide links, and I know Joe will as well.